Silence is not weakness, it is energy gathering. Introverts don't escape the world, they prepare to transform it. True power doesn't always roar, sometimes it whispers. When we think of silence, many people automatically assume it is an absence of sound, of movement, of expression. Yet, silence is not the absence of something. It is the presence of something far greater. For the introvert, silence is not a void. It is not emptiness. It is energy gathering, consciousness expanding, and awareness sharpening. Silence is where the true self begins to breathe. In the modern world, noise has become the default setting. We live in an environment where attention is constantly hijacked, where voices compete for dominance, and where stillness is often mistaken for weakness. But for the introvert, silence is not a weakness. It is the very foundation of power. It is within silence that the introvert collects the fragmented pieces of their being, aligns with their own energy, and recharges in a way that extroverted expression rarely allows. Silence, then, is a sanctuary. It is a state of deep recalibration where the mind, body, and spirit synchronize. Science tells us that when we withdraw from external stimulation, the brain's default mode network becomes active. This network is associated with introspection, memory consolidation, and imagination. In other words, when introverts step back into silence, their brains are not idle. They are engaging in some of the most important processes for human growth and creativity. The world may see someone sitting quietly, not speaking, not moving much. But inside, entire universes are being formed. Ideas are weaving themselves together. Energy is accumulating and finding direction. Think about the rhythm of life itself. Every inhale requires an exhale. Every wave that crashes onto the shore retreats back into the ocean. The beating heart contracts and expands in cycles. The seasons move through winter before spring can bloom. Silence functions in the same way for the introvert. It is the necessary inward pull before outward expression. It is the gathering of strength before movement. It is the inhale before the exhale of creativity, speech, or action. This rhythm is not just natural. It is essential for balance. The world often celebrates extroverted qualities, talking, networking, socializing, and outward performance. But what is often overlooked is the profound inner work that sustains all of those external actions. Silence allows energy to be concentrated instead of dispersed. Just as a bow must be drawn back before it releases an arrow, silence draws the introvert's energy inward, creating tension, focus, and intention. When the time comes to release, the arrow flies with precision and strength. That release may be a brilliant idea, a creative project, a meaningful conversation, or a life-changing insight. The silence before it is not emptiness. It is preparation. There is also a deeper, more spiritual truth within silence. When external distractions are reduced, the introvert is able to tune into subtler frequencies of existence. Silence is where intuition speaks the loudest. It is where the heart communicates in whispers that are often drowned out by the noise of constant activity. In stillness, the introvert learns to listen not only to their own thoughts, but to the intelligence that flows through all of life. Many of history's greatest innovators, philosophers, and visionaries retreated into silence to access these deeper dimensions of thought. It was in silence that they cultivated clarity and gathered the courage to step into their unique path. Consider the energy dynamic. Extroverts gain energy by being around people, exchanging words, and engaging with the external world. Introverts, however, gain energy by withdrawing into stillness. In silence, their nervous system relaxes, their brain recalibrates, and their body stores vitality. That stored vitality becomes a reservoir of strength they can later draw upon when they step back into the external world. Silence, therefore, is not passive. It is active regeneration. It is a power plant where energy is produced and preserved. Think of a seed buried in the soil. To the casual observer, nothing seems to be happening. The soil is still, silent, unmoving, but within that silence, the seed is gathering energy, splitting open, and preparing to break through the earth. Growth is occurring invisibly, silently, yet powerfully. That is the way of the introvert. Their silence is not stagnation. It is transformation in progress. They are gathering energy in ways that the noisy world may not see, but when the time is right, their growth becomes undeniable. Silence also sharpens awareness. When an introvert retreats from constant noise, their senses become more attuned. They notice subtleties others overlook. The tone behind words, the unspoken emotions in a room, the patterns in human behavior, and the details in their environment. This heightened perception is not a coincidence. It is the natural result of energy being redirected from constant expression into deep observation. Silence, therefore, equips introverts with insights that are often hidden from those who cannot sit still long enough to notice. In silence, the introvert is not running away from the world. They are engaging with it at a deeper level. They are gathering the strength to re-enter the world with more clarity, more energy, and more authenticity. They are aligning with their inner rhythm, so they do not get lost in the rhythm imposed by society. And in doing so, they embody a quiet power that is unshakable. Every action, every decision, and every word that emerges into the external world begins first as a thought, an image, or a feeling in the inner world. The outer reality we experience is not separate from the inner reality we create. It is a reflection of it. For the introvert, this truth is not only understood but lived. Their power lies in the recognition that what is cultivated inside eventually manifests outside. The richness of their imagination, the depth of their reflections, and the clarity of their internal vision become the foundation upon which their external world is built. Most people rush into the world seeking to change circumstances by controlling the external environment, moving faster, talking louder, forcing outcomes, but the introvert understands something more profound. Transformation begins within. Before the artist creates a painting, the picture already exists in their mind. Before an inventor brings forth a new creation, the vision is already alive in their imagination. Before a leader inspires others with their words, those words have first been rehearsed, shaped, and refined in the inner chambers of their own thought. The introvert, often immersed in inner dialogue and reflection, naturally leans into this process of creation from the inside out. The inner world is a laboratory of possibility. Within it, the introvert experiments with ideas, simulates scenarios, and tests outcomes without the immediate risk of external consequences. This inner rehearsal strengthens clarity. Science shows us that when we visualize or imagine an action, the brain fires as if we are actually performing it. Neural pathways are strengthened, connections are formed, and the body prepares for the external expression of what was first imagined. This means that when introverts dwell in their inner world, when they reflect, visualize, and dream, they are not wasting time. They are actively shaping the neurological foundation for their future action. The quiet mind becomes fertile ground for creativity. In solitude, introverts weave together fragments of experiences, thoughts, and memories, forming new patterns that lead to innovation. They are not afraid to dwell in ambiguity, to sit in the discomfort of not knowing, because they trust that within that silence answers will emerge. They recognize that the inner world has its own timing, its own process, and that if they nurture it patiently, the outer world will eventually reflect the growth that has been cultivated inside. Imagine a sculptor standing before a block of marble. To the untrained eye, it is only a slab of stone, but to the sculptor, the vision of the figure already exists within. They are not creating something entirely new. They are revealing what is hidden. That is how the introvert engages with the world. They carry visions within them, and through reflection and inner cultivation, they bring those visions into form. Their power does not come from constant external activity, but from the precision with which they bring forth what has already been created in their inner space. The world often undervalues the invisible. Productivity is measured in output, conversations, and visible action. Yet the deepest shifts in history, the greatest works of art, and the most revolutionary ideas began invisibly, in the mind of someone who dared to dwell in their inner world long enough to shape something extraordinary. The introvert carries this ability naturally. They can spend hours thinking, journaling, imagining, and meditating, not because they are avoiding the world, but because they are preparing to meet it with something profound. This is why the inner world must be treated with reverence. The quality of one's thoughts, beliefs, and inner dialogue eventually determines the quality of external life. For the introvert, the inner world is not just a place of retreat. It is the workshop of destiny. When their inner dialogue is expansive, when their imagination is directed toward possibility, when their beliefs are aligned with growth, their external reality begins to organize itself around those patterns. Energy flows from the inside out, and life reflects what has been internally rehearsed. Introverts often find themselves underestimated because they are not always the loudest voice in the room. But what is unseen is the sheer volume of internal activity happening beneath the surface. They are constantly constructing meaning, weaving insights, and envisioning outcomes. This creates a hidden reservoir of wisdom that, when expressed, carries far more depth than scattered words or impulsive actions. Their outer world may look calm, measured, or even slow, but beneath it lies a powerful current of inner creation that steadily shapes the course of their life. Even in moments of challenge, the inner world remains the key to transformation. When external circumstances seem overwhelming, the introvert knows they can retreat inward, not to escape, but to realign. They can use visualization, reflection, and inner dialogue to rewrite their response to life. Neuroscience shows us that the brain does not always distinguish between an event that is vividly imagined and one that is physically experienced. This means introverts can literally rewire their brains by the images and thoughts they hold within. Over time, those inner rehearsals become the foundation for new behaviors, new perspectives, and ultimately, new realities. The truth is, the outer world is never fully in our control. Circumstances shift, people change, environments fluctuate. But the inner world, our thoughts, our imagination, our belief, remains a space where mastery is always possible. Introverts hold a natural gift in this domain. They can turn inward, cultivate clarity, and build resilience from the inside out. And when the inner world is mastered, the outer world inevitably follows. In a world that often glorifies speed, volume, and visibility, observation can appear to be a passive act. People are encouraged to speak louder, to move faster, and to constantly project themselves outward. Yet, there is a hidden strength in those who pause long enough to notice. Observation is not inactivity. It is an active, intentional awareness that gathers information others overlook. For the introvert, observation is not simply a habit. It is a superpower that shapes their perception of reality and gives them access to deeper truths about life, people, and the world around them. To observe is to become attuned. While many rush to respond or dominate a conversation, the introvert listens. They are not only listening to the words spoken, but to the tone beneath the words, the pauses between sentences, and the emotions that ripple beneath the surface. Their attention penetrates beyond appearances, allowing them to see what others miss. In this way, observation becomes a gateway to wisdom. They notice patterns in behavior, subtle cues in body language, and inconsistencies that reveal hidden truths. These details, often invisible to the untrained or hurried eye, are revealed only to those who have the patience to watch and the discipline to remain present. Science supports this gift. When individuals engage in deep observation, the brain's mirror neurons activate, allowing them to understand and even feel the emotions of others. Introverts, who are more naturally inclined to spend time watching rather than constantly reacting, strengthen this empathetic resonance. This is why many introverts can walk into a room and immediately sense the atmosphere, feel the tension that others ignore, or recognize who is authentic and who is not. Their superpower lies not in speaking first, but in perceiving deeply before they act. Observation also gives birth to insight. Many breakthroughs in history have not come from constant action, but from those who took the time to quietly observe. Think of the scientist who spends hours watching nature until the pattern emerges, or the artist who studies human movement until they can capture it perfectly on canvas. The introvert possesses this same capacity. They are able to sit back, watch how events unfold, and in doing so, they connect dots others cannot see. The world may label them as reserved or quiet, but their quietness is not empty. It is filled with awareness that eventually translates into clarity and precision. When we observe, we shift from reacting to understanding. Most people react to life instantly without pausing to interpret or reflect. The introvert, however, creates space between stimulus and response. That space is filled with observation. They take in the details, consider the implications, and only then respond with intentionality. This makes their actions more impactful, their words more meaningful, and their decisions more grounded. The ability to observe before reacting allows them to navigate life with a depth that is often missing in those who are constantly consumed by noise. Observation also transforms relationships. Because introverts notice the subtle nuances of behavior, they are often able to understand people on a deeper level. They remember small details, they sense unspoken needs, and they recognize when someone is struggling even if nothing has been said. This creates a profound sense of connection. People often feel seen and understood around those who observe deeply, because true observation is a form of presence. It says, I am here, I am paying attention, and I see you fully. This is a rare gift in a world where so many are only waiting for their turn to speak. But observation is not limited to people, it also extends to life itself. Introverts notice the changing of the seasons, the rhythm of their own thoughts, the patterns of energy that move through their day. They recognize how their environment shapes their mood, how certain habits influence their energy, and how cycles repeat themselves until they are understood. By observing not only the external world, but also their internal landscape, they gain mastery over themselves. Self-awareness grows when observation is turned inward, and this allows the introvert to break free from unconscious patterns that keep many trapped. There is also a spiritual dimension to observation. When the mind becomes still enough to truly watch without judgment, a deeper awareness emerges. Observation opens the door to presence, to seeing reality as it is rather than as we assume it to be. The introvert, by nature, often leans into this stillness, creating moments of connection with something larger than themselves. In those moments, observation becomes more than noticing. It becomes communion with life itself. It allows them to touch truths that cannot be spoken, but can only be experienced through presence. Think of the predator in the wild. Its survival depends not on constant noise or activity, but on keen observation. It studies its environment, waits patiently, and notices the slightest movement before it acts. That patience is power. In the same way, the introvert does not need to be the loudest in the room to hold influence. Their power emerges from their ability to see what others overlook and to act with precision when the time is right. This is why observation must never be underestimated. What appears as quietness on the outside is often a profound gathering of insight on the inside. Introverts may not always draw attention to themselves, but they hold a vantage point that others do not. They sit above the noise, watching, learning, understanding, and in that elevated position they hold access to truths that shape their lives and the lives of those around them. Energy is the currency of life. Everything we do, every thought we think, every word we speak requires energy. Most people spend this currency recklessly, scattering it across endless conversations, distractions, and reactions to external demands. They live in a constant state of depletion, wondering why they feel exhausted, uninspired, or disconnected from themselves. The introvert, however, carries a different understanding. They recognize, often instinctively, that energy is not meant to be wasted, but conserved and directed with intention. Their power does not come from doing more, but from channeling their energy with precision. The truth is, where attention goes, energy flows. Each time we give our attention to something, we are investing energy into it. Extroverted personalities may thrive on dispersing this energy outward, drawing it back from social interactions. But introverts are acutely aware that their energy is not infinite. They feel the weight of drained conversations, overcrowded rooms, and constant stimulation. Instead of scattering themselves thin, they choose to conserve their energy, withdrawing when necessary, so that when they do engage, their presence carries depth and impact. Their silence is not avoidance, it is protection. Their retreat is not weakness, it is wisdom. Think of energy as water in a reservoir. If the gates are opened constantly, the water will spill everywhere, flooding unimportant channels and evaporating into nothingness. But when the gates are managed, when water is directed intentionally, it can generate power strong enough to light entire cities. Introverts embody this principle. By conserving their energy, they create the potential to direct it toward what truly matters. When they choose to act, their energy does not trickle out aimlessly. It moves with purpose, creating transformation. Neuroscience and psychology affirm that energy is not just physical, but mental and emotional. Every thought we repeat consumes energy. Every worry, every internal conflict, every attempt to please others drains the reservoir. Introverts, with their heightened self-awareness, are more attuned to these subtle leaks. They know that overextending themselves in environments that demand constant external output leaves them depleted, so they make choices that honor their energetic limits. They spend time alone not simply to recharge, but to recalibrate, to draw their energy back inward so it can be refined, stored, and later directed outward with intention. This conservation is what allows introverts to reach depth in their pursuits. While others may spread themselves across multiple tasks and conversations, introverts dive deeply into a chosen focus. They are able to enter states of flow more easily because they have not wasted their energy on constant external engagement. Their concentrated attention transforms the ordinary into extraordinary. A writer spends hours immersed in crafting a story. A researcher spends days analyzing details others would overlook. A thinker sits with an idea until it unfolds into innovation. This capacity for deep focus is only possible because energy has been conserved and channeled deliberately. There is also a spiritual intelligence in the way introverts handle energy. Many traditions teach that energy is sacred and must be directed consciously. Meditation, prayer, visualization, all are practices that involve conserving scattered attention and focusing it inward. Introverts embody this practice naturally. Their need for solitude, their desire to reflect, and their ability to sit in silence all contribute to gathering energy back to its source. This gathering is not selfish. It is preparation. By conserving energy, they are able to offer the world something far more meaningful when the time comes to act or speak. Consider the archer drawing back the bow. The power of the arrow lies not in the frantic movement of arms, but in the conservation and direction of energy. The string is pulled back slowly, deliberately, gathering potential. Only when the arrow is released does the stored energy reveal its power, striking with precision. Introverts live this way. They are constantly drawing back, gathering energy inward, so that when they release it, whether through words, actions, or creations, it lands with accuracy and strength. This approach to energy also protects them from burnout. In a culture that celebrates busyness, constant availability, and overexertion, many people run themselves into exhaustion. Introverts, by honoring their energetic boundaries, resist this trap. They know that saying yes to everything is ultimately saying no to themselves. They recognize that energy must be managed like a precious resource. This wisdom allows them to preserve vitality and maintain alignment with their values, rather than scattering themselves across obligations that dilute their impact. Energy conservation also allows introverts to cultivate presence. When energy is not being wasted, the mind is not fractured by constant distraction. Presence emerges. They can give their full attention to a person, a task, or a moment, and this presence has power. People can feel when they are truly being seen and heard. A conversation with an introvert often feels different, not because they are saying more, but because the energy behind their listening is whole and undivided. This kind of presence can heal, inspire, and transform in ways that constant chatter never could. Even creativity is an expression of directed energy. Ideas that are nurtured in solitude become works of art, solutions to problems, and visions that shift the world. The introvert's creative power is born from their ability to conserve energy long enough for it to take form. While others may exhaust themselves on endless activity, the introvert quietly channels their energy into creation. This is why so many writers, thinkers, inventors, and visionaries throughout history have been introverts. Their ability to conserve and direct energy allowed them to produce work that carried lasting impact. Quietness is often misunderstood. In a world that celebrates noise, constant movement, and outward performance, stillness can appear unproductive or even weak. Yet it is within quiet that the most profound transformations take place. The introvert understands this truth deeply, for their power is not in the volume of their voice, but in the depth of their silence. Transformation does not always announce itself with fireworks or grand gestures. More often, it happens in subtle, unseen spaces where stillness allows the old to dissolve and the new to emerge. Consider how nature transforms. The seed does not shout as it breaks open beneath the soil. The caterpillar does not make a sound as it dissolves within the cocoon to become a butterfly. Winter does not scream its way into spring. The shift happens gradually, quietly, until suddenly life blooms again. Transformation is not born in chaos, but in calm. In the same way, introverts often experience their most powerful breakthroughs in the quiet spaces they create for themselves. Moments of solitude, reflection, and inward listening. Quiet is not absence. Quiet is presence. It is the space where the noise of the external world fades enough for the inner voice to be heard. Within this voice lies wisdom, creativity, and guidance. For introverts, retreating into quiet is not avoidance but alignment. It is in this alignment that they begin to reshape their reality. The process may not be visible to others, but internally, entire worlds are being reorganized. Beliefs are shifting, perspectives are widening, and clarity is forming. By the time this inner transformation expresses itself outwardly, It may appear sudden to the world, but it has been unfolding silently for a long time. Science tells us that the brain requires periods of rest and stillness for consolidation. Just as muscles grow stronger not during the workout but during the recovery, the mind also integrates, reorganizes, and transforms during moments of quiet. Introverts intuitively allow themselves this integration. Instead of filling every silence with activity, they embrace stillness, trusting that growth is happening beneath the surface. This is why their insights often carry such depth. They have allowed themselves the space to transform ideas into wisdom before bringing them forward. Quiet also creates the conditions for authenticity. When we are constantly surrounded by noise, it becomes difficult to distinguish our own voice from the voices of others. In stillness, the introvert reconnects with their true self. They shed the expectations imposed by society, the roles they are told to play, and the identities they are pressured to adopt. In the silence of solitude, they rediscover who they really are. This self-knowledge becomes the foundation for transformation. When they step back into the external world, they do so with clarity, integrity, and strength, carrying the authenticity that was born in the quiet. Transformation in quiet is not only personal, it is also creative. Many of the greatest works of art, literature, and innovation were conceived in solitude. The quiet provides a fertile ground for imagination, allowing the mind to wander, to connect dots, and to envision what has not yet been seen. Introverts harness this creative energy because they are willing to dwell in silence long enough for ideas to take shape. While others rush to produce or perform, the introvert patiently allows inspiration to mature until it emerges with a depth that cannot be replicated by hurried effort. There is also a spiritual dimension to transformation in quiet. When the mind becomes still, awareness expands. The constant chatter of thoughts fades, and a deeper intelligence begins to flow through. Many spiritual traditions speak of the power of silence as the pathway to awakening, to union with something greater than the self. Introverts, by valuing stillness, naturally step into this space. They create moments where they can hear not just their own thoughts, but the subtle guidance of intuition, the whispers of the heart, and the currents of life itself. This connection brings about transformations that are not only personal, but transcendent. Even healing is born in quiet. The body repairs itself most effectively during rest. The mind heals from stress in silence. Emotional wounds find closure not in endless distraction, but in moments of still reflection where feelings can be acknowledged and released. Introverts create these healing spaces for themselves by embracing quiet instead of running from it. They know that transformation requires time, patience, and stillness. By honoring this process, they allow themselves to grow stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Transformation in quiet also teaches the power of subtlety. Not every change needs to be loud to be profound. A single shift in perspective, a single moment of clarity, a single realization born in silence can alter the entire trajectory of a life. The introvert understands that the greatest revolutions often begin in whispers. A thought shifts, a belief dissolves, a vision forms, and from that quiet shift, entire realities are reshaped. What begins as stillness ripples outward, transforming not only the individual but everyone they touch. The quiet, then, is not an escape from life, but the very crucible in which life is transformed. It is the sacred ground where endings turn into beginnings, where confusion turns into clarity, and where potential turns into reality. Introverts hold this power because they are not afraid of silence. They walk into it willingly, knowing that in its embrace they will find the transformation that cannot be forced in the noise of the external world. The power of introverts does not lie in being louder, faster, or more visible. It lies in the qualities the world often overlook: silence, depth, observation, conservation of energy, and transformation through quiet. These are not weaknesses to be fixed. They are profound strengths that shape reality from the inside out. In silence, introverts gather strength. In their inner world, they create the blueprint for the outer world. Through observation, they see what others cannot. By conserving and directing energy, they act with intention rather than impulse. And in the quiet, they undergo transformations that ripple outward to inspire and impact the lives of others. The truth is, the world has always been moved forward not only by those who speak the loudest, but also by those who are willing to sit in stillness long enough to hear what others cannot. The introvert's power is not measured by how often they are seen or heard, but by the depth and authenticity of what they bring when they choose to step forward. Their gift is not in noise, but in resonance. Their influence is not fleeting, but enduring. To honor the power of introverts is to honor the truth that strength comes in many forms. Some roar like thunder, others move like a silent tide. Both have the ability to reshape the world. But the introvert reminds us that true power does not always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it observes, sometimes it waits in stillness. And when it finally emerges, it carries a force that cannot be ignored.